Dave Allen is fighting Lovejoy. Now, the only Lovejoy I've ever heard of is the character from the 1990s television comedy series. But apparently there's a heavyweight boxer of the same name, and he's fighting Dave Allen on Saturday on the Usyk Chisora undercard. So if we slide on over to Lovejoy's record, his first name is Christopher, we can discover that he is a 36-year-old American heavyweight, a record of 19-0 with 19 KOs. He's 6'5". His weight has fluctuated massively throughout his career. He turned pro at 302 pounds. His second fight, he was 317, and I think that was a career heaviest. Since then, he's yo-yoed in weight until he finally came in at his career lightest, which was in January of this year, at 236 pounds. Something else to note is the fact that all of his fights up until this point have been in Mexico. And bear in mind, this is an American heavyweight. So the fact that he's been fighting in such obscurity in Tijuana, Mexico, for his first 19 fights would suggest that he isn't particularly talented. Now, there are always anomalies, of course. There are always exceptions to every rule. But generally speaking, if you're a talented American heavyweight, you will be talent spotted by a trainer, by another fighter, by an agent, by a manager, and you will be introduced to certain trainers in America. You'll be introduced to certain matchmakers, to certain managers, promoters, and you'll be having all of your fights, or the majority of your fights, in the States. The fact that this guy has been fighting entirely in Tijuana, Mexico, it doesn't bode well for him, at least not on paper. So yeah, that's what we know about Lovejoy. I've looked on YouTube to try and find some footage of him fighting, and I can't find any. Maybe some of you have seen some footage. If you have, please post links in the comment section below. All I've managed to find myself of Lovejoy is some clips of him hitting the pads. And I know you can't read too much into people hitting pads because some people don't really look very good on the pads, but when they get in the ring, they can really fight. I mean, if you ever look at Marcos Maidana hitting pads, he doesn't look impressive. I've seen little kids, amateur kids in the gym who look a million miles better than Maidana hitting the pads. But you wouldn't put him in the ring with Maidana, would you? So I know you can't read too much into pads, but for whatever it's worth, he looked very poor from what I saw hitting the pads. He looked very poor. His technique looked poor. His stance, the way he was throwing the shots, he just looked poor. Very novice-y. So let's see what happens here. It was supposed to be Christian Hammer that was fighting Dave Allen originally, but we know what happened there. I covered it in the previous video. So in steps Lovejoy, the heavyweight boxer, not the character from the 90s television comedy series. I mean, maybe it would have been more entertaining if it was the character from the comedy series. Shout out to anybody above a certain age who remembers Lovejoy. I think that started in the 80s because there was a big long gap between the first series and the second series of like, I think 4 years or something, 3-4 years. But yeah, Lovejoy, old school. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below about this particular fight. Dave Allen versus Lovejoy. It's really a stab in the dark at this point because you really don't know what you're going to get with Chris Lovejoy. Is he going to give Dave Allen any issues at all? See, Dave Allen, as we know, is a very limited fighter. And he has this terrible habit of not throwing punches in a lot of his fights. I mean, when he fought, what's that big guy called that Dave Allen knocked out? God, I forget his name. Can't remember it now. Some big tall guy, heavy build, and he was boxing Dave Allen's head off, and then Allen landed one right hand. Nick Webb, that's his name. Nick Webb. He was beating the brakes off Dave Allen, and Dave Allen wasn't throwing any punches, and then out of the blue, bang, Dave Allen landed this big overhand right and knocked Nick Webb out. And that's the story of the majority of Dave Allen fights. He just doesn't throw any punches. He takes a beating, and then he comes over with that big swinging right hand. And sometimes it lands, sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, he generally gets beat. I saw a video where David Hay was talking to Dave Allen. It was quite a funny video, actually, back and forth banter. And they were face to face talking. And David Hay was kind of trolling Dave Allen and telling him that he saw this Lovejoy guy face to face and that he's actually a huge guy and he looks closer to 7 foot than 6'5", and he's actually really solid muscle. And, you know, he was just trolling him. And at one point he said that Lovejoy flattened Tyson Fury in sparring. Again, I think he was just trolling. But at first, Allen wasn't sure if David Hay was serious or not, because David Hay was acting like he was serious. So, yeah, I'm going to assume that that was just trolling as well. Well, I know a lot of the stuff David Hay said in that conversation with Dave Allen was trolling, but specifically about Lovejoy flattening Tyson Fury, I'm going to assume that that is not true. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm out.